Sammy, Sammy Rye here with another one of those podcasts with Sammy Rye. And today we're going to ask a simple question. What franchises out there do you guys like the world better than the main characters, or at least some of the characters, right? I got into doing the Chrome reality. My stories that I do online, which you can read right now over on my Substack, or go to my website, www.sammyride.com. And you guys can jump right in, because I got into making the Chrome reality because as a kid, around when I was about 10 or 11, I realized there were some franchises out there where I wanted to see more about the world, and honestly, I was kind of over the main characters. Not that these main characters are bad characters or anything like that. Obviously, I like these franchises, but I wanted to see what else was out there. There's some worlds that get introduced to you that are so amazing. Star Wars is one that comes to mind. You know, when I was younger, I played Shadows of the Empire on the N64. Back in the 90s, there was a nice, run where they were putting out new Star Wars toys. And I was a bit younger. In my neighborhood, my family didn't really get into Star Wars in the 80s. I kind of found out about Star Wars more in the 90s from some of my friends I had made around my teenage years. They were big into Star Wars. It was big for them in the 80s. I didn't even see the films, in my maybe first 10 years of my childhood. So when I came around to see Star Wars, there was already, some of the 1995 films that had come out. And while I liked Star Wars, I really was interested in the world. I wasn't blown away so much about everything happening in the film. There have been other films that had come out by that time, right? So I really wanted to know what else was out there. And Shadow of the Empire for Star Wars introduced a new character called Dash Rendar. He was like a Han Solo type character. He had a different kind of ship called, I think, the Outrider. New toys were in stores. It felt like it was Star Wars for me, right? So I know a lot of Star Wars fans, for them, it was like sacrilegious. It wasn't the real Star Wars to them. But for me, it was a cool era. It was an entry place for me to jump in. It felt darker. It was less Jedi focused, so it was more grounded. And I thought all those things were really cool. Seeing mobsters and gangsters and these different kind of underworld characters really focused more on in the Shadows of the Empire story, I thought was really cool, which might even appealed more to my urban upbringing, right? At the time, hip-hop was obviously really big. I'm growing up in Camden, New Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia. This seemed like a much cooler take on Star Wars. And it sucked because after they made the N64 game, which I thought was also a great game, we've practically never seen any of those characters again. It's been like 30 years. I don't think they've done anything with them. And whenever they announce a film, it's always going back to Luke Skywalker, the Skywalker story, Skywalker's grandson, his cousin, every single person. Hey, how are they related to Luke Skywalker? And it drives me insane. Not that I don't like Luke Skywalker. I love Luke Skywalker. I really disliked The Last Jedi film. I felt like they did Skywalker really bad. I always feel bad for Mark Hamill when it comes to that kind of stuff. So when I started designing Neochrome, maybe almost out of a bad intention, I really wanted to not have a main character. And when you guys are reading it now, if you guys have gotten into it, you got Sammy Rye, a character inspired by me, but which is not me. A character inspired by me in some events from my childhood, some concepts that I had. That's a character I present, but we very quickly switch over to another character, Mitchell Oswald. And then we're going to have another character we're introducing very soon, probably in episode 6, named Bit Jackson. And we'll talk about Bit because you guys have already met Joe Jackson. And I'm not even sure if I mentioned Bit yet in the books, but that's a little bit of a teaser if you guys pay attention to the podcast, right? But Bit will be the other main character. So there's 3 different characters, and doing the research, a lot of writing books will tell you, you should not do that. But for me, I really wanted to make it seem like you don't have to stick with one of these people. Hopefully for some people, they don't like Sammy Rye, or they find a closer connection to Mitchell or a closer connection to Bit. And I'm hoping that makes them love Neochrome more, and not be so focused on one character. Is that a bad idea? Maybe. Not having a flagship character or a character you put all your eggs in their basket might be something that's not a good idea to start an IP. But hey, you maybe only get one chance to do it, and I wanted to do it my way. I think Camden so far has really been able to shine through in my writing. That's not bragging. I put a lot of detail into it, and I think that comes from my relationship with Camden, which has always been a really difficult relationship I've had. Is a place where I have so much love for it, but obviously so much pain and stuff like that, which I think comes through in the writing. But I think that it can be a cool place. And I've always told people, living outside of Philadelphia, living not that far from New York City, that Camden just had no glory. There was no great thing about Camden. You hear about cities that have all these legacies, right? You hear about Compton, you hear about Houston, Atlanta, all these cool places. Camden, New Jersey is not one of them. So when you live there and you're kind of in the shadow of Philly, you can't really claim that you're from Philly because you're not really from Philly. But honestly, that's the only place anything's going on. It really, I think, brings a negative identity to the city. Originally, fun fact, in one of the earlier versions of Neochrome, I just blow up Camden. It was just completely destroyed. Everyone died. It was definitely, you can tell in my young childhood how I felt about the city, which obviously has changed as I've matured and I've gained the hindsight. But in that version of it, I really wanted to just get rid of Camden and go to Neochrome. Of course, as I matured, I realized there's actually really important things about Camden. Really, Neochrome does not exist if not for my experience with Camden and my dreams and things like that. And trying to understand what does it take to make this amazing city you want to go to. And I spent most of my, teenage years and my early 20s developing Neochrome as a city. The amount, I have over, I think, close to 300 documents on how the water system works, how the air security works, how the buildings are built, how the energy is maintained, all these things I've refined over the years, which you won't even see in the story. But if anyone ever sits down and has the question, I can pretty much answer it off the top of my head, or I understand how the world works. Not only with Neochrome now, but it's actually expanded. Now I understand the population of people on the moon, the population of people on Mars. How many people actually live in space between the three planets, right? Just on space stations and are traveling. How many people actually work in space? These are all numbers I've been able to come up with and figure out over the years through lots and lots of research, doing estimates to figure out what it might look like in the year 2103. And then, really getting more of a sense for how this world can get fleshed out beyond Washington State where Neochrome resides, right? There's places like the Golden Waste that you guys will hear about in, future stories. And that's when the world building really got me excited, really focusing on understanding how these areas work, how they affect each other, and then building out the world to other continents. I started creating characters when I got older that were from all over the world. I thought it would be really cool to have characters from, Madagascar, is a really important characters from Madagascar. And that made me learn about Madagascar to create that character, which is an enriching experience as a writer. But again, hopefully these things shine through as I try to develop these stories. So I think about this and I ask you guys, put this in the comments, DM me. What are some franchises, what are some worlds that you like a lot where you're not actually that crazy about the main character? I would love to hear what you guys have to say about that. We're going to keep it short and sweet. That's the podcast today, a little Chrome talk. Hopefully you like this series. I do a lot more little bits of this. And I'm Samurai. Peace.